Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks, and this week, the Holy Grail of Telecasters. Maybe even just the Holy Grail, come to think of it. A 1951 Fender Nocaster. So what on earth is a Nocaster? Now rewind to NAMM in July of 1950, and Fender have just unveiled their piece de resistance. Leo Fender and George Fullerton's vision of the world's first commercially available solid-body electric guitar, the Fender Esquire. But to say that the reaction wasn't quite what they'd anticipated would no doubt be something of an understatement. Initially mocked as a canoe paddle, a snow shovel, and perhaps most damningly, a toilet seat with strings. And indeed, I guess relative to the ornate archtops which were so prevalent in the day, the Fender Esquire was somewhat primitive. Only one pickup, no truss rod, and literally comprising of one bit of wood bolted to another. Leo Fender, famously not a guitar player, was a notoriously practical man. More on that later. And his vision for the Esquire was that of ergonomic simplicity, easy to make, and crucially, easy to upkeep. If your frets wore out, simply remove the neck and add in a replacement. Now, clearly undeterred by this initial lukewarm reception, Fender persevered and sought advice from those best positioned to offer it when it came to the design of a guitar. Guitarists, and thus a truss rod was added, as was a second pickup, positioned closer to the neck for added versatility. And thus in October of 1950, the Fender Broadcaster, priced at $169.95, was unveiled to the world, and history was made. Well, nearly. Now, it is of course a widely recounted, albeit apocryphal tale, that Fender were sued by Gretsch over their use of the name Broadcaster, which Gretsch had been using on a drum kit, albeit spelt with a K, since 1937. As tempting as it is not let the truth get in the way of a good story, the reality, as you can imagine, and it is often the case, a little more mundane. That reality being that on February 20th, 1950, Fender received a telegram from Gretsch alerting them to the fact that they were in fact infringing on their Broadcaster copyright, seeking assurance that they would abandon the use of the name immediately. Now, if Fender did have any initial plans to contest the much bigger company's request, they quickly abandoned the idea. As you can see from this memo dated only a day later, on February 21st, 1951 to all of their salesmen, alerting them to the fact that they were no longer to call their guitars the Broadcaster. It would then be less than 4 months before the Broadcaster was renamed and unveiled at NAMM in 1951 as the Fender Telecaster, the world's longest running production guitar, which is all well and good, but what on earth is a Nocaster? As I referenced earlier, Leo Fender was a famously practical, thrifty man, and upon Gretsch's request that Fender abandon the use of the name Broadcaster, not only did Leo find a way to reuse or repurpose the advertising pamphlets by simply blocking out Broadcaster and writing Telecaster above it, but also found a way to reuse the decals that Fender had already had produced, of course bearing the Broadcaster name, simply by clipping it off. And thus, between late February and October of 1951, approximately 480 guitars were made without any official model name, now affectionately referred to as the Nocaster. Now, it's hard to really overstate the cultural significance or historical importance of these guitars. It is quite literally the guitar that changed music before it had found its feet, or indeed its actual name. And of course, with less than 500 having been produced over 70 years ago, needless to say, finding one for sale is like trying to find hen's teeth for sale. But if you do manage to find one, as was this example before it was very quickly snapped up here at ATB Guitars in the UK, don't expect to get much change out of 6 figures. Now, as with anything that's not long celebrated its 72nd birthday, this guitar has lived a life. This guitar more than most, in fact, I would say, having been the sole guitar of its owner for many a year, an incredibly high-profile, incredibly prolific British session player, who over the years has played with the likes of Eric Clapton, Roger Daltrey, Iggy Pop, Bob Dylan, Tina Turner, Dire Straits, Pete Townsend, Bryan Adams, George Michael, Robbie Williams, Joan Armatrading, and the Pet Shop Boys, to literally name but a few. It was also bought for him by his uncle, Dave Davis of the Kinks. Now, as you can also tell from the discoloration on the back of the guitar, caused by the remnants of some sticky tape, this guitar is also confirmed to have been previously owned by someone called Carl. I'll let you fill in the blanks on that one, but suffice to say that no Carl, no Elvis, and, to quote Paul McCartney himself, definitely no Beatles. Now, in regards to the guitar itself, the neck is dated as the 2nd of August 1951 and initialed TG. Of course, Tadeo Gomez, arguably Fender's most famous employee and renowned neck carver, while the body is dated as the 9th of August 1951, again initialed TG. The control plate, the original control plate, comes in the case, while the replacement was fitted by Steve Pryor, guitar tech to the likes of Jeff Beck, Pink Floyd, and of course Brian May, while the tuners are 1980s repros. It's had a refret at some point in its life, as you'd expect, having been through such heavy usage and of course having been its owner's sole guitar for so many years, but the pickups are original and as far as anyone can tell, don't appear to have been rewound. But first and foremost, my first impression upon picking this guitar up was that it's amongst the loudest, most naturally resonant guitars that I've ever had the privilege to play. It really was extraordinary. How much of that is tied into the fact that it's also incredibly lightweight, coming in at 2.96 kilograms, about 6 pounds 5 ounces. The neck had a very subtle, almost imperceptible hint of a V, especially down towards the lower frets, which was incredibly comfortable to play, although I guess the obvious caveat being that I am a big fan of V-neck profiles. But in no way, shape or form did this play like a guitar now comfortably into its 8th decade. I've been lucky enough to play 2 other Blackguards in my life, a late 51 Telecaster and an early 54 Telecaster, and suffice to say this was unequivocally the standout of the bunch and totally deserving of, I guess, its price tag in a strange way, but primarily its reputation. It was just a staggeringly good guitar, and I'm very fortunate and very happy that I got to play it before it, needs to say, is now in the hands of its new owner. So cheers to ATB for the opportunity. I'm going to play you out now, but as ever, thank you very much for watching. This is Friday Fretworks. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I shall see you next week for another episode. Cheers guys, take care, see you soon.